welcome into Bash's College Football Show this week. I guess we're just doing weekly shows now. But seriously, that's of course not the plan. It's just been kind of a crazy week, and it just seems to happen. You know, it's a very crazy time at work, just busier at work, and it takes a lot of out of you, and family just being busy, and things going on around me. And of course, I did stream on CFB 26 to kind of decompress when I had this prepared and then watch some football to make sure that I was in line with stuff, which I got to get back to, by the way, until I either crash or the game's end. But regardless, that's kind of what we do over here. It's college football all the time when college football is on. And of course, I'm available to do it. I am a fan just like you're a fan. I just try to dive in deep and give you guys all of my thoughts that are trapped in my brain that is always thinking about this stuff. So make sure you guys like the video if you like the video, and subscribe for more college football content. And check this out over on TikTok. I'm wearing an Ohio State polo here today. We're in Ohio State. It's kind of a polo. I'm not quite sure what you'd call it, but I really like this shirt. Anyway, so I'm going to the Ohio State game tomorrow. I'm going to try to make a post or two on TikTok. It might be after the fact. It's always very hard to make posts at the Ohio State games that I've gone to while I've done TikTok. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited to go to that game, and I think I picked a pretty good week to go to a game, considering that the top heavy of the slate is not really there. I plan to catch up on a lot on Sunday that I would have missed before we do a recap. So you can expect that to be more Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, doing a recap of week 6. We're going to talk about a couple of games, and then I'm going to give you the locks of the week here for Walk That Line. So we're blending Walk That Line with this week video just because we got to knock it out. And the thumbnail is actually going to be the Walk That Line thumbnail. I just want to dive into a couple of games real quick. This is primarily a Walk That Line video. All right. So the first game I want to talk about, and none of these 3 games are going to be on Walk That Line. So just to preface it with that. To me, there are 3 pretty big games to watch out for. And the first one I want to talk about is Texas going on the road to Florida. This is Arch Manning's first road test since coming to the shoe against Ohio State. But it wasn't pretty after that. They played against San Jose State, who I think is the best team out of the 3 after Ohio State that they played. And there were some struggles early. But it's like, okay, like diehard college football fans that I was just watching San Jose State. They started out looking impressive, and like I said, I need to get back to it, but San Jose State's not a bad team. Like, they're probably one of the best 1-3 group of 5 teams in America. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's true. They're not that bad of a team, so struggles there. You know, it's like, all right, they're well coached. Ken Niumatalolo got them up, especially on defense. Like, they were awake for that game. But then the UTEP game really threw me off because they are just completely outmatched. And in these games, UTEP has just completely gotten ripped off the field. They have not done well. They had a couple of years with Dana DeMel that were pretty good, but generally speaking, like, they were getting ran off the field. And Texas didn't really do that. So you raise an eyebrow. Then they beat the crap out of Sam Houston, who to me is a bottom 5 FBS program. If you watched them last night, you know. And, Arch Manning's talking that smack. They come off the bye week. And Florida, meanwhile, on the other side, you hear stuff about effort and losing to South Florida, getting embarrassed in a non-embarrassing scoreboard fashion against Miami. Because even though that game stayed competitive, there just was a lack of effort, a lack of intensity that really said, like, all right, they're talented enough to hang, but they don't have the mindset to go and win these games. I think this bye week is going to do Florida wonders. Like, I really think it will. I think that they're going to come out, they're going to play for Coach Billy Napier, knowing that he's probably a dead man walking, could potentially vault them to another level of motivation, let alone if they think they can save his job. And the status of DJ Lagway is not necessarily a concern for me. I know he's been dealing with an injury. I know he's good to go, but The real path to victory here for Florida is to drag this one out, run the ball a little bit, find some effectiveness there. They got to be able to run the ball in this game against a very, very stout Texas defense. And then they got to play great defense. And I think they're going to play great defense. This is a very tough place to play, too. I would argue that the Swamp is going to be a tougher place to play on Saturday, at least to start the game, if Texas doesn't end up pulling away and flexing their muscle a little bit because they're kind of starving to do so. But when I look at the slate, generally speaking, this is just kind of like a college football hedge as a fan. When you're a fan of the sport and you look at the slate and you're like, not much is going on at the top of the sport. Like, there isn't those big marquee matchups where you're just like, oh my gosh, number 1 is playing number 10. Number 3 is playing number 8, something like that, you know? You don't have that. The biggest matchup is Vanderbilt, not really the biggest football brand, even though they're on the come up, against Alabama. We're going to talk about that game. And then Miami, Florida State, which we're going to talk about. There's not that big of a top-heavy slate, and this seems like a sleepy week, which is exactly why I just got a hedge on it and pick Florida. I am going to pick Florida to win, and we're going to say the offensive struggles are real. I'm going to take Florida to win 14-10. Real low scoring, drag out. I do not have nearly as much conviction. If you guys were around last week, you heard me say that at least on TikTok, you would have seen me say I was pretty confident Virginia was going to win that game against Florida State. I do not have nearly the same conviction. I wouldn't say like, oh, you got to go after that money line. Like this is a real chance here. It just seems like this week, this is the type of chaotic situation that you're going to get. So with the combination of how Texas has looked, Florida definitely being a team with nothing to lose at this point and a lot of pride to be had in this game, I just get a weird feeling about it, given the whole all of those factors, and I'm gonna take Florida, knowing that Texas is probably the much better team. Vanderbilt at Alabama. The thing about Alabama that is going to trip me up here is Alabama really struggled last week in an impressive win against Georgia. It is hard to go on the road to Athens, Georgia, and Sanford Stadium and get a dub. Nobody's done it in 6 years until last week. So I don't want to take that away from Alabama. But a big wart that I saw was that rush defense. Vanderbilt gave them fits last year with that offense. They were able to hit shot plays at the right times. They were able to hit those knockout blows. They also had a big pick 6 at the beginning of the game to spark it. I think Alabama's going to play a little bit more buttoned up. They're going to be taking care of the ball better on offense because Ty Simpson is indeed an upgrade at quarterback than Jalen Milroe. And, you know, they also started to figure out how to run the ball a little bit. They were able to do it in crucial situations against Georgia, like trying to milk the clock at the end of the game, and they did get help with a penalty, I know. And also being able to finish at the goal line. But Alabama is going to be able to score, and I think they have the explosive ability to do that. But the issue is that Alabama offense is also going to be off the field for a good amount of time because I think Vanderbilt will be able to sustain drives with what they do. You could try to game plan for what Vanderbilt does, but in 1 week, it is almost similar to a triple option prep. It's not quite as drastic of a change from your normal prep, but you definitely are going to stylistically treat Vanderbilt different than other teams as an offense. And what Vanderbilt does well plays into the weakness of Alabama. Vanderbilt's going to score a lot as well. And this is going to be a high-scoring game, and I'm taking Alabama to get their revenge and survive here in this spot somewhere around like 37-34 is what I'm thinking. This game is going to be a dramatic thing. It's going to be a little bit nervous for Alabama fans, but I think they're going to pull away in the fourth quarter. Vanderbilt gets a late touchdown. They're going to be able to cover 10.5. pretty easily. I don't really think that's going to be too much of a sweat for anybody on that side of things. So you got Alabama winning this game, struggling running the ball with rush defense, but generally speaking, the firepower's going to be too much. The final game, Miami and Florida State. I'm going to caution all of you for if you're jumping off the Florida State bandwagon. As somebody who picked Virginia last week, this Florida State team's still not bad. I said they're still a good team. I called them fraudulent, and I said I wasn't buying into them the week before the Virginia game. And they are still a good team. And I said that in any video where I had negative connotation about Florida State. It's very interesting to me how the college football world works right here. We did this with Tennessee 3 years ago in 2022. We prop up this team higher than what they should be. And when somebody says, I don't think they're supposed to be that high, everybody's saying, you think that team's garbage. You don't know what you're talking about. This team's really good. And then all of a sudden, I get proven right in this situation. And of course, in 2022 is the same situation with Tennessee. And everybody's like, oh yeah, they're no good. No. There is a world in between Florida State being a bad team that cannot compete at the highest level of the sport and a team that's going to truly be a national championship contender. There are huge differences here. And I said the same thing about Tennessee. That Tennessee team was really good, magical. They were still not at the highest level of the sport. But with that being said, a rivalry game. These big games, Gus Malzahn is the offensive coordinator here. He saves his best stuff for these moments, for these spots. Florida State's going to hang around. And I think the big difference that's going to draw Miami in is I just trust their quarterback more. Tommy Castellanos has gained some of my trust. But Carson Beck is a really good quarterback. It was clearly not the best of situations over at Georgia, a team that led Power 4 football in drops last year. An offense that I just felt like Mike Bobo didn't really know how to establish an identity with that roster last year. I think he's doing better this year with it, but he still hasn't. Carson Beck's a really good player, and he's fitting into the Shannon Dawson system very well. And the best thing about it for Carson Beck is he and that pass offense played terrible against Florida in a comfortable win. You played terrible. You can grow. You can learn. You can have that itch to get back on the field and go show something in another big-time spot. And I think Carson Beck's going to do that. I think Carson Beck's going to make a statement to where people are going to be starting to talk about him for the Heisman. You got that statement 2 weeks ago from Fernando Mendoza, last week from Dante Moore. Now you're going to get it from Carson Beck this week. And I think the Hurricanes are going to pull this one out 31-28 with a gutsy victory and a performance by Carson Beck. I don't think Florida State's bad. I think they're a pretty good football team who could, if they chose the right spot to lose, could have competed for the ACC championship, but being 6-2, you're kind of taking the power out of your own hands in that spot. Army, UAB, we're taking the over 57.5. Look into the track record with Trent Dilfer. This Army team's not very good. I get it. And they're kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type of team, to be honest with you, because what you see from Army's offense in particular against North Texas and Kansas State is not the same thing you got against Tarleton at points in East Carolina last week. But it's a long week for Army to get some rest and prepare for UAB's offense. And guess what? They're going to score a lot because this is what Trent Dilfer does. He allows a lot of points. I am kind of on Army -7 in this spot. UAB is really bad, and to me at least. Trent Dilfer look up his history ever since he's been the head coach at UAB against these triple option teams. Generally speaking, he doesn't cover, and when he has, the over usually hits because he can't stop anything. And the only way he covered against Navy was because they were actually able to score on Navy, which is what I think is going to happen in this game. Michigan minus 17.5 versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin's really bad, man. They are really bad in particular. They're really bad on offense. Michigan does not have to score a ton of points to cover this number. Like, I think they cover this number with anything more than 26 points. Because I don't trust Wisconsin to score more than a touchdown against this Michigan defense. I just don't. This Michigan defense is really good, well coached. The secondary, I'm not sure if they can compete at the highest level of the sport, but they definitely are going to be able to shut down Wisconsin. Wisconsin is anemic on offense. They don't have an identity, and it's disgusting to watch, quite honestly. And I think that Wisconsin's defense will give Bryce Underwood some fits, but I think at some point that run game, they're good for an explosive touchdown or two every single game in the run game. One or two or more. I mean, you saw 3 against Nebraska. They're going to be able to pop those runs. Bryce Underwood is going to be able to make some plays, and at the end of the day, Michigan's going to win this game like 27-3. It's not really going to be much of a question. It'll be gross, but I'm going to take Michigan to cover here. Eastern Michigan plus 10.5 at Buffalo. I was very high on Buffalo to start the year, but I had a lot of questions about that, how that offense would work. And every single question that I had specifically about the quarterback position is at the floor of what I expected for Buffalo. And you've had Taquan Roberson banged up. This is just not like they shouldn't be laying 10.5 against anybody in the MAC right now other than maybe UMass. Buffalo had a very close call against Kent State just a few weeks ago. Kent State's not a good team. They're better, but they're not good. This Eastern Michigan team is better. I get how Eastern Michigan started and all that, but they definitely showed a couple weeks ago when they were able to pull off that win against Louisiana that, okay, but they're not that bad. And Chris Creighton, he gets his team up, especially off of a rivalry loss like it was embarrassingly. This is a good bounce back spot for Eastern Michigan. Buffalo's still going to win. I'm pretty confident in saying that, but I think Eastern Michigan can keep it within probably a touchdown. Notre Dame is going to absolutely smack around Boise State. I'm just telling you guys this. Last year, Marcus Freeman back against the wall. They lost one game to Northern Illinois. And I said this in Zach Smith's chat earlier today. I was like, lay it with Notre Dame. They're going to destroy Boise State. And the response was, this is the type of game that Marcus Freeman loses. Marcus Freeman doesn't lose this type of game when his back's already against the wall. And Boise State's going to have their attention because they made the college football playoff a year ago. This isn't your ordinary Northern Illinois, Miami, Ohio, whatever, Marshall, the Marshall game that they lost a couple years ago. This isn't that. They're going to throttle Boise State. I'm promising you that. Boise State's not athletic enough on defense to stop them. You saw that against USF, and I don't think they're going to score. This Notre Dame defense showed a lot of improvement against Arkansas last week. They showed so much improvement they got Sam Pittman fired. And then now they're going to be playing in Maddox Madston, who's had a pretty bad year so far. Not confident in Boise State. FIU plus 7.5. I think they're live on the money line. FIU kind of a little bit of a misleading loss last week, but still a pretty bad loss last week. They're going to bounce back. This UConn team, ever since that Syracuse game, they have not had it. They've just not had that shine. FIU keeps it within a touchdown. I think they're live on the money line. Louisville, I'm taking the team total over 34.5. A huge hangover spot for Virginia. Their pass defense is atrocious, and they haven't played a pass offense other than NC State, the team that beat them and hung 35. That is even remotely close to the capability of what Louisville has. Louisville has a ton of perimeter talent, and the biggest thing that it hinges on is Miller Moss taking care of the football. I'm taking Louisville 34.5, team total over. Let's go Texas State minus 13.5 at Arkansas State. This is a fun one because I think that GJ Kinney is going to go in there and absolutely destroy Arkansas State. Arkansas State is an absolute mess. They're a disaster. And meanwhile, Texas State is just kind of quietly sitting there looking like one of the most exciting teams. And against Arizona State, when they played them, that was another score that was kind of like misleading. They were definitely competitive in that game. I think this Texas State is way better than 2 touchdowns, and I don't care that it's in Jonesboro. It's not a tough place to play. Wyoming plus 3.5. I think they're live on the money line. UNLV is fraudulent. They have flirted with disaster time and time again. They flirted with it against Idaho State. They let UCLA get back into that game to where UCLA really had a shot at the end of the game. And against Miami, Ohio, they were down big. I think they were down 17-0 and then 14 points in a second occasion off of a Calandria pick 6. This UNLV team is fraudulent, and having to go up to Elevation and Laramie where they're always wild because they got nothing else to do around there. Yeah, I'm taking Wyoming to win the game outright, but you could take the 3.5 just to be comfortable. Texas Tech, they're going to lay it on Houston. They're off a bye, and Houston's coming off of a travel spot against Oregon State, and which, by the way, it seems like that offense is tapering off. Connor Wegman's going down, and they get Baron Morton back this week. That offense was looking rather efficient against Utah's defense, a really, really good defense. I think that they're going to throttle them. Kansas, huge bounce back spot here. An emotional loss at home. This could work in the opposite fashion, but I truly don't think UCF is a very good football team. I think that this number should be way higher in favor of Kansas. They should win by 2 or more touchdowns. And I think that they're going to be angry, mad, and they're going to come out swinging. Minnesota team total under 9.5 at Ohio State. Why would I believe that anybody's going to score more than 9 on Ohio State? Nobody has. And Minnesota does not have the best offense that they face. They probably have the 4th best offense that Ohio State's faced. I would argue Ohio has better offense. I'd argue that Texas, even if they look ugly, and Washington all have better offenses. They were able to muster 7, 9, and 6. And yes, I did it in that order, not just because of the results, but I don't want to be a part of the 6-7 memes. Oh, did it. Tulsa plus 20.5. Dude, if you want a long shot money line, this is the one. Because you always get this weird game from Ryan Silverfield where this Memphis team just sleepwalks the whole way through, and it can be a home game. I'm just saying, Tulsa is going to hang around. They're going to hang around in this game. This is too much because Memphis just sleepwalks in these spots. They flirt with disaster, and they sometimes will lose in these spots. So I'm telling you, watch out for Tulsa to possibly pull off the upset outright against Memphis. I think it's definitely possible, as crazy as that sounds. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Make sure you guys like the video if you haven't already. I'll see you guys in the next one.